Welcome again to another edition of the program. It's good to have you join us this weekend. I'm Temple Ashaju. Let's turn up the program with a few market news. The Chartered Institute of Stockbrokers has announced the election of Mr. Olatunde Amolegbe as its new president and chairman of the governing council, now succeeding the incumbent President, Mr. Adedakbo Adekoje. The emergence of Mr. Amolegbe as president of the institute follows the maiden virtual annual meeting of the stockbrokers. And Mr. Amolegbe, an accomplished investment analyst, had a fellow of the institute, was, until his election, the first vice president, while Mr. Oluwole Adeosun, the second vice president, has now become the first vice president, and Mr. Olurokpo Dada of Network Capital won the keenly contested election to emerge the new second vice president. Meanwhile, Mr. Adekoje is to formally hand over to Mr. Amolegbe at a later date in a high-profile ceremony. And now the board of Skyway Aviation Handling Company has offered to pay a total of 224 million naira in dividend to shareholders for the calendar year ended 2019. A breakdown of the total value amounts to 16 naira 50 kobo per share, and it's the first dividend payout since SACCO's listing on the Nigerian Stock Exchange in April 2019. The ground handling company recorded a 24% increase in revenue to 7.66 billion naira with a loss of 446.53 million naira in profits after tax. The share price of SACCO closed higher on Friday by some 4%. Now, Tier 1 lender UBA Bank has hit the news wires with the intention to redeem its 7-year bond at a coupon of 16.45% and an aggregate amount of 30.5 billion naira on June the 30th, 2020. The bond was issued in December 2014 with a maturity date of December 2021. Now, the decision for the early call is based on the condition of 5.2 of the terms of notes of subscription, which was issued in December 2014. On the redemption date, the Registrar Africa Prudential will pay each net holder the amount payable in respect of the investments. Now, the Investment and Securities Tribunal, IST, this week resumed court sittings following the directives of President Muhammadu Buhari requesting all grade 4 to grade levels 14 to 17 officers and other essential workers to resume work within the public service. Now, the tribunal under the acting chairman, Mr. Jude Uduni, dealt only this week with urgent matters not requiring the testimonies of witnesses, with only lead counsels in attendance and in accordance with the COVID-19 protocols as issued by the civil service. And joining us now to x-ray some of the activities of the IST is the acting chairman, Mr. Jude Uduni, who joins us from our Abuja studios live this evening. Thank you so much for coming through on the program.
Thank you, Tempo.
All right, let's begin.
Having me.
Thank you so much. So let's begin the show by hearing from you. What are the impacts that COVID-19 has created on IST? Where was the tribunal in terms of capital markets dispute resolutions before the lockdown?
Thank you, Tempo. As you very well know, the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic has impacted businesses world over. And the IST is not an exception. It has impacted and affected our sittings and meetings, and generally attendance to work. As you just reported, as at present, only levels 14 to 17 or levels 14 and above officers attend to work these days. And it has really slowed down our work. Before now, we were doing very well in the resolution of capital market cases. All the cases that have come before us, we have sat down for hearing. Some were at various stages of conclusion. And as at the date that we closed down, we had a judgment in Enugu that we should have delivered, and the ruling set down, which, as you reported, we just took this week, Wednesday.
And that must be the case of Olanio against partnership investment. But so how did that pan out eventually?
It went well. We sat as planned, and but before that, as you well know, we had put in place measures to safeguard both staff and the investing public who come to the tribunal to have their cases heard. We had decontaminated the head office, and we are in the process of decontaminating the various zonal offices. We have also put in place all the measures as advised by the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19. We have purchased all the medical equipment that are needed, thermometers, hand washing machines, and sanitizers. We have also put in place certain protocols to ensure that social distancing or physical distancing is maintained, and that whoever walks into the tribunal can be assured of his safety while he's within our premises.
So why is the IST not ready to consider the use of virtual interface at this point, knowing that you have some investors who may be weary to come to court or to attend sittings?
Temple, you are not correct to say that we are not ready to consider virtual sitting. We have actually, as I talk, we have come up with a draft direction on virtual sittings. But we had to start with physical sitting because as at the time we were ready to go to town to issue the direction, a lot of arguments came up in favor and against virtual sitting. Some legal luminaries and jurists were of the view that virtual sitting offends our constitution, and we had to slow down the issuing of our direction. But we are looking at the apex court, the Supreme Court, and other courts of the land. We are also evaluating the arguments for and against virtual sittings and remote hearing. We will issue our direction, and we will embark on virtual hearing and remote hearing in the nearest future.
So how many more cases does the IST have pending at this point in time, and how many more of that will be treated within this period of COVID-19?
We have about 30 pending cases in Abuja, Lagos, Enugu, Port Harcourt as of today. Within this period, we are set to at least handle about 10 of them, where the issues are not such as to take evidence. We will not embark on trials at the moment. We will deal with motions and applications and non-contested cases. And as you may also know, we have an ADR section within the tribunal, Alternative Dispute Resolution Mechanism. And this department will also handle whatever matters that are referred to it. Actually, this week, Friday, I received a report on one of the matters that they are handling. And as it looks, we may be set to go, conclude on that matter.
So the tribunal last year came up with the plans to onboard money market cases. Where is the IST on that at this point?
Yes, you are correct, Tempo. Last year, the immediate past chairman of the IST made a public pronouncement that it will be good if the tribunal takes on financial services cases, money market cases. We are still reaching out to stakeholders in this wise. We are still liaising with relevant stakeholders, And as you well know, it is not a policy that we can sit down within the IST and conclude. It requires the involvement of our parent ministry and all the stakeholders in the market. And at the end of the day, we know that it might lead to an amendment of our Establishment Act.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the other burning issues that you have at the IST. What are the latest developments around the funding of the IST at this point in time? Because I know that the issue of funding is still a very critical thing.
Tempo, I will be very slow to talk on funding at this time. This is not the best time to start talking on funding. But as you said, yes, funds can never be enough for any institution. We cannot say that we have enough to deal with, but government is doing its utmost, and the market is also contributing to the funding of the IST. I think for now, we are doing well.
Okay, so are you leveraging any partnerships? Are you considering any partnership now for carrying out some of the other desired functions that you really want to onboard?
Yes, like I just said, our supervising ministry, we are doing very well with our supervising ministry. They have been very cooperative and supportive of our activities. And within the market, the Securities and Exchange Commission has been wonderful. So also is the Nigeria Securities Exchange and the Central Securities CSCS, with other institutions in the capital market like FMDQ and NASD. They have been very, very cooperative and they have been very helpful. We are looking at reaching out to the CBN. We have actually done that, but we have not concluded our interactions with the CBN. And we are looking at other capital market institutions outside Nigeria that we had one form of relationship or the other before now with, but which we have not followed up with in recent times, like the US SEC and the Financial Services Markets Tribunal in the UK.
Let me take you back to the issue of money markets cases. It was good you actually mentioned the relationship that you're striking with FMDQ, where a lot of the money market instruments are domiciled. But when it comes to the issue of capacity of the lead counsels for all of these cases, what is the capacity of a lot of the operators that will forward these cases at the IST today?
Sorry, Tempo, you mean capacity of people who are bringing the cases before the IST?
Who are handling the cases at the IST?
You know, most of these cases are filed by lawyers. And as you know, lawyers are referred to as learned people. I think they're on top of the cases they bring before the tribunal. The tribunal, as it is now, deals with only capital market cases. And as you very well know, Tempo, the capital market cases are technical in nature. And sometimes, yes, we have seen some lacunae here and there, but I don't think they are doing badly. There are some lawyers who are highly skilled in the handling of capital market cases in Nigeria, and I think they are doing well.
All right, Mr. Jude Onduni, the acting chairman of the Investment and Securities Tribunal, thank you so much for coming on the program this evening. We appreciate your insight into the activities of the IST.
Thank you so much, Tempo, for having me on this program.
I appreciate it. Well, after the break, we'll listen to the concerns of shareholders over the staging of annual general meetings via proxies. Stay with us. Thank you so much for staying with us. This is Capital Market on your station of choice, Channels Television. Well, as we coast home at this point, let's look at some shareholders' concerns around holding AGMs by proxies. Some domestic and minority investors in the capital market have been speaking against the ongoing conduction of annual general meetings of quoted companies via proxies, as approved by the Corporate Affairs Commission and other regulatory bodies. Now, this class of investors holds the opinion that AGMs attendance by proxies disenfranchises shareholders who deserve or reserve the right to attend the meeting and make contributions. We're joined now by the Director General of the Institute of Directors, Mr. Dele Alimi, who recently held a webinar with some shareholders over this concern. He joins us now to shed more light on this particular development. Thank you so much, Mr. Dele Alimi, for joining us on the program this evening. So you had a webinar with some shareholders this week over the organizational statutory obligations, but not all the shareholders actually had the capacity to participate. But tell us, how really disenfranchised are these minority shareholders at AGMs by proxies?
Well, thank you very much, Temple. How are they disenfranchised? The truth of the matter is that we are in a situation where we just have to make do with the condition we find ourselves. And yes, it is true that not being present at an AGM it can actually cause some level of concern for shareholders. But the truth of the matter is that at the moment, with the place we find ourselves, organizations do not have a choice if they want to keep within the extant provision of the law. They just have to ensure that they keep to what the law says. And thank God, CAC has provided these guidelines to help them in scaling this order. Yes, shareholders are concerned that management and directors can get away with a lot of things when the shareholders are not there. But the truth of the matter is that, well, as much as possible, we discovered during our webinars that organizations are now improving on their communication with the shareholders. And with that improvement, they've been able to carry along shareholders to a very large extent. And that is why most of the AGMs that have been held in the last few weeks by proxy have not really had issues of great concern in terms of shareholders not being physically present as such AGMs. So to a large extent, I think from what we have seen and from what we have observed, the concerns of shareholders may not necessarily be that serious. And if you recall, we even had one of a major player in the Independent Shareholders Association who said, well, they've come to accept this situation as a doctrine of necessity, but will not want that practice to continue when this COVID-19 pandemic situation improves.
What's the response of boards of companies at this point, and what are institutional shareholders or investors saying about these concerns raised by the minority folks?
Yes, of course. What they're trying to do is to assuage the concerns of the shareholders by ensuring that there is consistent and complete communication with their shareholders. Of course, even the guidelines given by CAC specifically spelled out the need for organizations to ensure that the shareholders are reached and they by post, and there must be proof that these shareholders have actually been contacted to choose who they want to represent them at the AGM. So what companies are saying now is that, look, we have no choice. The law says within 15 months of the last AGM, we must hold AGMs. And don't forget, Temple, that before this problem started, organizations were already preparing for their AGMs, and plans were already almost completed. So what they could do within the ambit of the law is what they are doing now. So their response has been to ensure that the stakeholders are carried along. And in the last few AGMs we've seen, dividends have been declared. To a very large extent, all the ordinary businesses have been carried out, which in your normal AGM have passed without any rancor problem. So to a large extent, I think we are really scaling this up, and as much as possible, as an institution, we are trying to ensure that we bridge that gap to make sure that both directors and shareholders are on the same page.
So does that imply that shareholders who are able to join online for the AGM will also have the right to vote?
No, they will not have the right to vote. Their right to vote are already been ceded to their proxies. So it's the proxies that will vote on their behalf. It is assumed that if there are issues that requires their votes, the choice and the votes to take will have been given to those proxies, and the proxies are voting on their behalf.
It's more of awareness that needs to be created around these whole AGMs by proxies. Is that what this implies as well?
Yes, definitely. The organizations and the directors hold shareholders the duty to ensure that adequate communication is given. No matter how you have to lay everything bare and open. There must be complete transparency. It is very important at this stage. When shareholders believe in you, there's really no problem. You must also realize that it is in the interest, mutual interest of both directors and shareholders that the organizations continue to exist. So at the end of the day, we must disagree to eventually agree.
Okay, Mr. Alimi, before I let you go, let's look at what the managing director of the IMF, Ms. Kristalina Georgieva, said during the week. She advised banks to actually put a stop to the payments of dividends payouts in order to beef up their retained earnings, for the future of their company. Now, do you think this is the good music to the ears of shareholders?
It's definitely not good music. Shareholders are ready to hear that kind of thing. But one can understand where she's coming from. Nobody knows how far this pandemic will go and the negative effect it's going to have, especially on the financial institutions. And that is where our advice is coming from. But like was pointed out during the webinar that we had, it is important that organizations also look at their reserves and be sure that reserves can also to some extent help the organization. It is not sweet music to them, but it's good advice. But then we're also talking about result of last year.
Yeah.
While you want to take care of the future, you must ensure that the present is also safe.
All right, Mr. Dele Alimi, but unfortunately, we're beginning to lose audio of the Skype connection there. But thank you so much for your insights on this issue of shareholders who feel disenfranchised by the AGMs by proxies, actually. Mr. Dele Alimi is the Director General of the Institute of Directors. Thanks once again for joining us on the program. Before we go, we know that the Nigerian Stock Exchange is collaborating with Milken Institute to host the inaugural edition of a webinar series on sustainable capital market for West Africa on Friday, June the 5th, 2020. That's just next week. The webinar is themed Fundamentals of Developing Green Bond Markets and is being supported by the Securities and Exchange Commission. The forum will provide a platform for policymakers and thought leaders the opportunity for knowledge sharing across the financial African landscape. And that's it on the program for this weekend. Thank you for watching. Thanks for being a part of it. I'm Temple Ashaju. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.